The courtroom was buzzing with excitement. Officers from the 12th Precinct sat confidently in the front rows, exchanging smug glances. They had beaten the system again. The charges of corruption, bribery, and abuse of power had been dismissed on a technicality. Their well-paid attorneys had poked just enough holes in the prosecution's case to let them walk free. Sergeant Daniel, Danny, Rhodes leaned back in his chair, a cocky grin plastered across his face. "Told you, boys," he muttered under his breath. "No one touches us." Captain Roger Langley, the man at the heart of the precinct's corrupt dealings, let out a chuckle. "Damn right, Danny. This city belongs to us." Judge Wallace banged his gavel, calling for silence. "Court is adjourned," he announced. Cheers erupted from the officers. The system had failed. Again. But then, as the officers stood to leave, a slow, deliberate clapping sound echoed through the room. The celebration died down as all eyes turned toward the back of the courtroom. A woman in a crisp, dark suit stepped forward. Her hair was tied back in a tight bun, her presence radiating authority. The officers recognized her instantly, Special Agent Olivia Carter. She had been the relentless force behind their prosecution, the one who had worked tirelessly to bring them to justice. And she had failed. Or so they thought. Danny smirked. "Aren't you supposed to be crying in some corner right now, Agent Carter?" he sneered. "Looks like your big case just fell apart." Olivia's lips curled into a knowing smile. She reached into her jacket, pulled out a badge, and held it up high for the entire courtroom to see. "Gentlemen," she said coolly, "meet your new FBI chief." A stunned silence followed. The color drained from Langley's face. Danny's smirk vanished. "Bullshit," Langley scoffed, rising from his seat. "This is some kind of joke." Olivia took a step closer. "No joke, Captain," she said, her voice steady. "As of this morning, I've been appointed as the new FBI chief overseeing corruption investigations. You may have dodged this one case, but your time is up." The officers glanced at one another, realizing just how precarious their situation had become. The woman they had dismissed, mocked, and underestimated was now the most powerful federal investigator in the city. And she had a personal vendetta against them. Judge Wallace cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. Chief Carter, this is highly irregular." Olivia turned to him. "Irregular?" she echoed. "So is watching a group of criminals in uniform celebrate after manipulating the system. But don't worry, Judge. This isn't over." She stepped forward, locking eyes with Langley. "See, the thing about technicalities is, they work both ways. This trial may be over, but the federal investigation is just beginning." Danny swallowed hard. You can't do that." "Oh, but I can," Olivia said with a smirk. "And trust me, gentlemen, I will." The officers' once triumphant faces were now etched with panic. Their celebration had been premature. They had won the battle, but the war had only just begun. As Olivia turned and walked out of the courtroom, a chilling silence remained. The corrupt officers knew one thing for sure: they weren't untouchable anymore. Part 2. The Hunt Begins. The air outside the courthouse was crisp, but Olivia Carter felt nothing but fire in her veins. The press swarmed the steps, cameras flashing, microphones shoved toward her. "Chief Carter, what's your first move against the corruption in the force?" one reporter shouted. She took a measured breath before speaking. "Justice doesn't stop because of a corrupt courtroom. The FBI has been given full authority to investigate all officers involved in this case. We're not just talking about one precinct. We're talking about a network that runs deeper than anyone realizes. And we will dismantle it." Inside the courthouse, Captain Langley grabbed Danny Rhodes by the collar and dragged him into a secluded hallway. "We need to act fast," he growled. "Carter isn't bluffing. She's coming for us." Danny pulled away, straightening his jacket. "Relax, Roger. She's just grandstanding for the cameras. She doesn't have anything on us." Langley's jaw tightened. "She doesn't need anything right now. She's the FBI chief. She controls the people who make cases. That means wiretaps, undercover agents, forensic audits, everything we can't control anymore." For the first time that night, Danny felt a cold sweat on the back of his neck. He had spent years buying silence, burying evidence, and intimidating witnesses. But Olivia Carter wasn't just another detective. She was federal now, and she was coming. The first strike. A week later, the 12th Precinct was in chaos. Officers were being called in for questioning. Some had their homes raided by federal agents at dawn. Computers, files, and personal bank records were seized. The fortress they had built was crumbling fast. Danny sat in a dimly lit bar, nursing a whiskey. He had managed to stay off the radar so far, but he knew it wouldn't last. A man slid into the seat next to him. It was Detective Marcus Shaw, a longtime ally. "We got a problem," Marcus muttered, glancing over his shoulder. "Carter's people just flipped Perez." Danny's grip on his glass tightened. Officer Miguel Perez had been part of their crew for years. He knew too much. "How bad?" Danny asked, his voice low. Marcus exhaled sharply. "Bad enough. He's cutting a deal to avoid a long sentence. They'll have everything soon." Danny pushed his drink aside and stood. "Then we need to shut him up before he talks." Marcus hesitated. "Are you sure? This isn't just city cops anymore. We go after a federal witness, and it's war." Danny's eyes were cold. "Then war it is." Meanwhile, Olivia Carter sat in her new office, reviewing case files late into the night. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered. A distorted voice spoke. "Back off, Carter. You're making dangerous enemies." She smiled to herself. "Good. That means I'm doing my job." The call went dead. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. This was only the beginning. Part 3. The trap is set. The night was cold, and Danny Rhodes knew he was being watched. Every time he stepped outside, an unmarked car wasn't far behind. His phone calls were shorter, his meetings more discreet. But no matter how careful he was, he couldn't shake the feeling that Olivia Carter was always 2 steps ahead. In a warehouse on the city's outskirts, Captain Langley sat across from an unknown figure. The man wore a black suit and had the air of someone who had seen and done things far worse than Langley could imagine. "She's coming for you," the man said, lighting a cigarette. "She won't stop." Langley leaned forward. "Then we stop her first." The man exhaled a cloud of smoke. "You don't get it, do you? Carter isn't playing the same game you are. You're trying to survive. She's trying to burn everything down." Langley slammed a fist on the table. "Then we make it personal." Carter's move. At FBI headquarters, Olivia stood before a board filled with maps, photographs, and case files. Her team had been working non-stop, piecing together a web of corruption that stretched far beyond the 12th Precinct. An agent rushed in. "Chief, we intercepted a message. They're planning something big." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "Details." "They want to take you out, ma'am. And soon." She smirked. "Let them try." She turned to her team. "We need to make them think they're winning. We set the bait, and when they take it, we bring the whole operation down." The final showdown. 2 nights later, in an abandoned parking garage, Danny Rhodes waited with a gun tucked into his waistband. Langley had promised that tonight would be the end of Olivia Carter. A black SUV pulled in. The door opened. But it wasn't Carter. It was an entire FBI tactical team. Danny's face went pale as he realized. He was the one who had walked into a trap. From the shadows, Olivia stepped forward. "Game over."